In March of 2011, Sean Funk, a shovel operator at a mine in Fort McMurray, Alberta, was digging when he made an amazing discovery. A discovery that turned out to be Alberta's oldest dinosaur fossil and one of the best preserved ever found in the entire world. Honestly, this has to be the most amazing dinosaur discovery that I've ever read about. And I think Don Henderson, curator of dinosaurs at the Royal Tyrrell Museum, agrees, saying at the time, "Right away we knew it was going to be something good, but we had no idea how good it was going to be." So after getting the fossil back to the museum, Don and his team got to work, and 6 years later the dinosaur was named Borealopelta markmicheli. The name Borealopelta means shield of the north, and the species name honors Mark Mitchell, the museum technician who spent over 7,000 grueling hours removing the dinosaur from rock. Now, I'm not done with this one. There's just too much to talk about with this discovery to cram it into one point. So as I said, the Borealopelta was incredibly well preserved. It was covered in thick armor, especially around its neck. It also had these massive 20-inch spikes at the shoulders that were assumed to be for fighting, but Victoria Arbour, a curator of paleontology, also thought they might have been a display of health and strength, similar to the horns of a bull or tusks of an elephant. Now here's what's utterly crazy to me though. This dinosaur was so intact, they were able to see what was in its stomach. There were twigs and ferns in there, suggesting it ate during the wet season. Scientists think it could have been swept away by a flash flood, eventually sinking to the bottom of the sea. The body would have flipped over and sank, with its thick back and bloated belly causing it to be preserved in sediment, creating a natural time capsule that kept it safe for 110 million years. Here's another crazy thing about this find though. They were even able to determine, to a certain degree, what color the creature was. Most of the fossil was covered in relatively well preserved skin, and from this they were able to study pigment cells called melanosomes. Melanosomes are seen in nature all the time. It's what gives many modern day animals unique markings like spots and stripes. It's rare to see melanosomes in fossils, but again, Borealopelta was especially well preserved. At least one component of Borealopelta's color was this reddish brown, said Caleb Brown from the Royal Tyrrell Museum. The color on its back may have been part of a camouflage pattern called countershading, helping it blend into its environment and avoid predators. Now also in 2011, a team of paleontologists led by William Hammer discovered a new species of ancient dinosaur in the frozen mountains of Antarctica, an area that's usually thought of as one of the coldest places on Earth, but of course millions of years ago it was much warmer. The dinosaur was small, around 4 to 5 feet long, and had bird-like hip bones. It was likely related to early plant eaters like the Ferbosaur and Heterodontosaur, which were the ancestors of larger and more famous dinos like Stegosaurus and Ankylosaurus. The fossils were found on Mount Kirkpatrick, part of the Central Transatlantic Mountains. Hammer and his team uncovered a leg and foot, but they weren't sure if they had found the dinosaur's head. It would take about a year to fully understand what they'd found. Thomas Holtz, a geology professor at the University of Maryland, noted that the find could help fill gaps in both dinosaur evolution and the ancient Antarctic environment, saying that this discovery was from a time when dinosaurs were just starting to take over, comparing these early small plant eaters to rabbits, fast, common, and without armor, but important to the overall evolution of the giant plant eaters that came later. Finding fossils in Antarctica is extremely challenging because of the harsh conditions and short research window. Hammer had been trying to return to the site since 1990, but bad weather and helicopter problems cut short his 2003 trip. As Holtz put it, anytime we find fossils there, it's a brand new species. It's practically unexplored territory. This is not an AI video. This is a real piece of footage taken back in 2018 at a golf course in South Carolina. This gator was caught strolling through the golf course on its way to somewhere. It's become a pretty famous video. The event was taken by multiple people from different angles. Video of it showed up on the news, and it's understandable. It looks like footage of a living dinosaur. Even the family of deer in the background just couldn't help but stand there in total shock. Like, what are we looking at right now? They're standing there like a deer in headlights. All right, I guess deer aren't really all that hard to surprise. But still, gators are some of the oldest animals on the planet. I still find it so cool that you really are looking at a living dinosaur when you see one. This footage here was captured by members of a Japanese expedition crew in the Congo. They were seeking out evidence of an elusive animal known to the locals as Wolly Mammoth, a plesiosaur-like creature believed by some cryptozoologists to be a remnant of the Cretaceous period. Wolly Mammoth comes from Bantu mythology. It's said to live in the Congo River Basin. It's described in different ways. Some say it's a reptilian creature, others think of it as a spirit, but the most popular description is an ancient dinosaur-like sauropod. In the early 1900s, cryptozoologists got really interested in this legend, with some launching expeditions to find proof of the creature's existence. Most experts believe that the stories about Wolly Mammoth are probably based on sightings of the black rhinoceros, which used to roam the region. Some even think the myth may have been influenced from earlier tales about Great Zimbabwe. This next creature is called Tuatara. Just look at this silly, stubby-legged little lizard. Cute as can be, according to me. I know some people are freaked out by reptiles and lizards, but I really enjoy them. So these things can be found roaming around in New Zealand. They look like a lot of reptiles you've probably seen, very similar to iguanas, but these things have quite the history. They've been around for an estimated 225 million years. So once again, they're basically living dinosaurs, just very small ones. Pretty cool. What's also interesting about these things is that they don't have ear holes like modern day reptiles, so their hearing is, of course, limited, but they can still respond to low frequencies. Next up, we have the Chinese giant salamander, and when I say giant, I do mean giant. These are the largest amphibians in the world. Some of them can reach up to 6 feet in length, weighing in at about 110 pounds. That sounds like a salamander that would have been roaming the earth during the time of the dinosaurs, and they did. The Chinese giant salamander has been around since the Jurassic period, about 170 million years ago. These creatures are also known for their very unique and haunting sounds. They've been described as rather unsettling. Some people describe them as barks or hissing, but the creepiest noise is the high-pitched crying, almost like a very young human. Given how huge these things are and the fact that they clearly do not look human, that would be pretty freaky hearing a sound like that come out of an animal like this. But honestly, I still think these creatures are kind of cute in their own weird way. And we have another dinosaur, the Komodo dragon. These things are insane. They're huge, some of the biggest lizards on the planet, weighing more than a full-grown human in some cases, and these things are as dangerous as they look. They've been known to attack and even kill humans, and to top it off, their bite is venomous. Scientists have found Komodo dragon fossils that are about 4 million years old. These giant lizards are found in Indonesia today, specifically 5 islands, one of which is called Komodo Island, which, no surprise, has the largest population of Komodo dragons in the country. You can't just wander onto this island, not that you'd ever want to. It's very strictly a guided tour situation. If you ever visit, trust me, don't want to go alone. If you stray too far, it could be the last mistake you make. Komodo dragons are no joke. Along with crocodiles and alligators, they're one of the closest things we've got to real-life dinosaurs. These reptiles can reach lengths of 10 feet with razor-sharp teeth and venomous saliva. They eat whatever they can catch: monkeys, deer, boars, goats, and sometimes humans. They're just pure predators. Now, they don't attack humans all the time, but between 1974 and 2012, there were 24 reported attacks in Komodo National Park. The shoebill stork. These birds have been around for 30 million years at the least. If you were to look at every living bird today and you had to just pick one that looked like it had been around since the prehistoric times, it would have to be the shoebill stork, right? This is definitely the one I'd be picking. Look at the size of the beak on these things, very dinosaur-esque. Shoebills are found in the swamps and wetlands of Africa. They're massive birds, standing about 4 to 5 feet tall with a wingspan of 7 to 8 feet. They have this unmistakable shaped bill, which can reach lengths of up to 9.5 inches just on its own. This massive bill is a formidable weapon for catching prey, which is mostly fish. They're known to be very patient hunters, standing motionless for hours before striking at lightning speed. And these birds really are just as intimidating as they look. Highly skilled hunters that are capable of preying on animals as large as young crocodiles. And to top it off, they make this eerie clicking sound with their beak. They sound almost like an automatic firearm or the predator. What you are looking at here is a horseshoe crab. Now, crabs may not be all that exciting to you, but these ones are different. Horseshoe crabs are one of the oldest creatures on the planet. They've been a staple of the Earth for around 445 million years. That is a lot of years. That's back before the land split off to form the continents that we have now. Earth still consisted of one single supercontinent when these things were around. These ancient arthropods have seen old friends go and new ones come along, and when I say friends, I mean entire species evolve and then go extinct. They've seen a lot. And interestingly, even though they have crab in their name, they're not actually crabs. They're more closely related to arachnids. 2007 and 2008, two baby mammoths, later named Lyuba and Chroma, were found in Siberia. They were so well preserved that researchers were able to piece together how they died, even though both calves, one about 1 month old and the other 2 months old, died more than 40,000 years ago. Scientists used CT scans to find that the two mammoths probably choked on mud after falling into water. Daniel Fisher, a co-author of the study, stated the mud was like a really thick batter that they got clogged in their trachea and they were unable to dislodge by coughing. Basically preserved them from taking another breath. Lyuba and the 1 month old calf was discovered by a reindeer herder. Chroma was found in 2008, frozen upright in permafrost. Scavengers had eaten parts of her heart, lungs, and skull. But both mummies still showed a neonatal line on their teeth, a marker of stress during birth, which helped scientists estimate their ages. CT scans of Lyuba showed signs of what's called a mammalian dive reflex, showing that she fell through the ice into a muddy lake where she tried to clear the mud from her airways but eventually suffocated. Chroma, who had a belly full of breast milk, also had mud in her trachea, but her death is a bit less cut and dry. But according to researchers, it's possible she fell into a river, broke her back, and was then buried in mud while trying to escape. In 2015, scientists in Siberia discovered a baby woolly rhino, perfectly preserved in a frozen riverbank. Nicknamed Sasha after the man who found it, the rhino calf is the most complete specimen of its kind ever discovered. Sasha lived around 10,000 years ago, was about 1.5 meters long, or almost 5 feet, and 0.8 meters high, about 2.6 feet, much smaller than the fully grown adults, which could reach up to 15 feet long. According to Albert Protopopov from the Yakutian Academy of Sciences, baby woolly rhinos are incredibly rare to find, so this was a pretty amazing discovery, especially because it helps researchers learn more about the early life of these animals, which they didn't really know much about before. Woolly rhinos went extinct around 10,000 years ago. Climate change and habitat loss likely led to their extinction, but some scientists also think overhunting may have been a part of it. Around 30,000 years ago in Siberia, a tiny cave lion cub was making its way across the tundra when a sudden mudslide or crack in the permafrost caused the cub to fall and get trapped. The cub was buried in ice, preserving her fur, skin, and organs in almost perfect condition. This poor cub, later named Sparta, was discovered by mammoth tusk hunters in 2017, poking out of the melting permafrost in Yakutia, Siberia. Sparta is probably the best preserved Ice Age animal ever found, said Love Dallin, one of the study's co-authors, going on to say that even her whiskers were preserved. Sparta died about 28,000 years ago, and she was actually found alongside another cub named Boris, who was even older, dying around 43,000 years ago. Both cubs were about 1 to 2 months old when they died, with their sharp teeth just starting to emerge. Cave lions were closely related to modern African lions and lived across the northern hemisphere during the Ice Age. Unlike today's lions, though, these were, of course, adapted to freezing cold weather. In 2002, an amazing discovery was made in northern Siberia. The remains of a woolly mammoth were found frozen in the permafrost near the Siberian village of Yukagir. The specimen which was an adult male, turned out to be in remarkable condition. This mammoth's head, still covered in skin, was so well preserved that it looked almost fresh. When polar explorer Bernard Bouygues heard about the find, he led a team to retrieve the mammoth's remains. The team made 3 trips to the site, carefully gathering pieces of the mammoth's body and putting them together. It gave scientists a ton of information about woolly mammoths. For example, they discovered that the mammoth had temporal glands between its eyes and ears. These glands would have helped regulate body temperature. The mammoth's feet were also a key find. The soles had deep cracks in it, which would have helped the animal grip icy surfaces while walking. The specimen also included the tusks, front legs, and even parts of the stomach and intestines. Based on the size of its bones and tusks, scientists estimated that this mammoth was over 9 feet tall at the shoulder and weighed around 4 to 5 tons. Scimitar cats, or homotheriums, were fierce prehistoric predators. Their fossils are rare. Because of this, scientists used to think that they were part of a small population. That changed in 2011 when a bone was found in permafrost at a mining site near Dawson City in Canada. This bone belonged to a scimitar cat, not a saber-toothed cat, which are often confused with scimitar cats. Scimitar cats had shorter, curved teeth that were serrated, unlike the long, flat teeth of saber-tooths. What made this find even more exciting was how well preserved the bone was in the ice. Researchers at the University of Copenhagen were able to sequence the entire genome from this bone. Their genetic makeup hints towards a scimitar-toothed cats as being highly skilled hunters, said Michael Westbury, an evolutionary genomicist at the University of Copenhagen. Going on to say they, quote, likely had very good daytime vision and displayed complex social behaviors, end quote. These cats also had adaptations for endurance. Their bones and cardiovascular systems were strong. They were built for long-distance running. And based on this, researchers believe scimitar cats hunted in packs, wearing down their prey during the day. Scientists estimated the specimen was over 47,500 years old. Scimitar cats likely went extinct around 10,000 years ago, along with many of the animals that they hunted, like mammoths and woolly rhinos. Most people think of hyenas as the scavengers of Africa, but the ancient Arctic also had its share of these creatures as well. These ancient hyenas lived over 5 million years ago, and its remains have been found around the world, from Mongolia to Kansas to Mexico. In 2019, evolutionary biologist Jack Sang analyzed a pair of fossilized hyena teeth from the Yukon. He quickly identified them as belonging to a species that once roamed the ancient Arctic. These teeth likely belonged to a hyena that lived around 850,000 to 1.4 million years ago. This hyena was equipped with teeth perfect for crushing bones, probably feeding on ancient caribou, bison, and maybe even baby mammoths. Eventually, these hyenas disappeared, and researchers think they were outcompeted by other Ice Age predators like the short-faced bear or bone-crushing dog. Never heard of those before till today. What an awesome name. In 2018, miners working at Hester Creek in the Yukon discovered a mummified squirrel, perfectly preserved from around 30,000 years before. At first, this lump of fur, claws, and limbs didn't look like much, but scientists examined it more and realized that they'd found an Arctic ground squirrel that had died during hibernation. Researchers nicknamed the squirrel Hester after the area where it was discovered, and it's amazing to think that this little guy was running around the Yukon several thousand years ago, said museum representatives. When the mummified squirrel was first found, its exact identity wasn't clear until the team noticed little hands, claws, and a tail. Grant Zazula, a paleontologist from the Yukon government, was part of the team that studied the squirrel, saying, "It's not quite recognizable until you see those little hands and these claws, and you see a little tail, and then you see ears." The team figured that Hester was likely hibernating when it died. Arctic ground squirrels curl up into balls like this, one when they hibernate in underground dens, often lined with nests made of leaves. These nests are usually found empty, so finding one with an actual squirrel inside was pretty cool. To avoid damaging the specimen, they decided not to unravel the ball of fur. Instead, they had it x-rayed by a local veterinarian who'd expected the bones to be in pretty bad condition, but when the x-ray results came in, the squirrel's skeleton was actually in great condition, and it looks nearly identical to a modern Arctic ground squirrel. In 2021, scientists discovered a tiny tiny microscopic creature that had been frozen in Siberian permafrost for over 24,000 years. The team found it buried 11.5 feet deep. The little animal was what's called a beloid rotifer, and despite being frozen solid for thousands of years, it actually came back to life. And on top of that, it was still able to reproduce. Rotifers are tough little creatures. They typically live in freshwater or moist soil and are known for surviving in extreme conditions like radiation, dehydration, low oxygen, and freezing temperatures. To confirm its age, scientists radiocarbon dated the soil surrounding the critter. Stas Malaven, a co-author of the study, couldn't believe it, saying, "We revived animals that saw woolly mammoths," which is quite impressive. I agree. Next on the list we have Sanek. In 2021, there was a pretty amazing discovery in Greenland, a new dinosaur. New in that we didn't know it existed, not a living dinosaur, sadly. Researchers identified a previously unknown dinosaur species based on well-preserved skulls. This newfound species was named Isi Sanek, meaning cold bone in Greenlandic Inuit. The remains of this creature date back to the late Triassic period, about 214 million years ago. The skulls were first found in 1994, and at the time they were believed to belong to a Plateosaurus, but recent advancements in research techniques, including micro-CT scans, showed that these skulls actually belonged to a different dino altogether, a dinosaur that was different from any known species. To visualize the full form of the skulls, researchers used digital modeling after the micro-CT scans. These were bipedal herbivores, medium-sized, and shared a lot of similarities with sauropods. Those are those long-necked, giraffe-looking dinosaurs you probably remember from Jurassic Park. But the Isi Sanek would have been a lot smaller than them. They're pretty cool-looking dinosaurs, almost like a sauropod mixed with a velociraptor, at least to me. In 2016, scientists discovered a 12,400-year-old mummified puppy. This puppy was discovered in the permafrost along a river in Siberia. Researchers believe the puppy died in a landslide and its body became preserved in the ice. Its fur was intact, and the body, from its nose to its tail, was almost completely preserved. The only part that wasn't in perfect condition was the brain, which had started to decompose, but even still, about 70 to 80% of the brain was still intact. This puppy is one of the few animals in the Pleistocene era which has a well-preserved brain. While there have been other dog fossils found from the same time period, they were too decomposed to study. The puppy's condition is especially special because its brain could help researchers learn more about ancient animals. In fact, they were saying at the time that they could potentially use the DNA and tissues from this puppy to bring it back to life, which would have been nuts. Along with the frozen puppy, human tools were found near the site, meaning that this dog was domesticated and owned by people. Here's something you probably wouldn't be expecting to see on this list: ancient camels. Believe it or not, camels actually first appeared in North America more than 40 million years ago. Over time, they split into two main groups: the camels we know today and the relatives, llamas and alpacas. The camels made their way across the Bering Land Bridge, while llamas and alpacas moved south. But there was another species, the Camelops hasturnus, which stuck around in North America until the Ice Age. Some of these camels roamed as far south as Honduras, while others made it all the way to Alaska and the Yukon. In 2008, gold miners in Alaska discovered some Ice Age bones, which turned out to belong to this extinct camel species. The bones were so well preserved in the cold that researchers managed to extract DNA. Imagine a 6-foot-long beaver weighing 220 pounds. Ice Age giant beavers had 6-inch long front teeth. They would have looked like fierce predators, but they didn't eat meat. This massive rodent was about the size of a black bear and had a tail that resembled a muskrat's rather than today's typical beaver tail. A 2019 study looked at fossils from the Yukon and Ohio dating back 10,000 to 50,000 years and revealed that the giant beaver's diet consisted mostly of aquatic plants. Tessa Plint, a researcher with Heriot-Watt University, explained that by studying the chemical makeup of fossilized bones and teeth, scientists can figure out what an animal ate even tens of thousands of years later. Understanding the diet of these ancient animals helps them learn more about how climate change affected them. As the earth warmed and dried, the giant beaver couldn't compete with smaller, more adaptable beavers that survived. In 2010, a team of Russian scientists found a well-preserved mammoth in Siberia, later named Yuka. She was a young mammoth, about 6 to 8 years old, and she lived around 39,000 years ago. Yuka's body was in really good shape. Its body measured about 2.5 meters long, and it was remarkably intact, with her trunk, bones, some of her flesh, hair, and eyes still preserved, making her one of the most well-preserved mammoth specimens ever found. Pretty incredible to see. I haven't seen it in person, but based on pictures and video that I've seen of it, it's crazy how well preserved it is. They think she might have fallen into a mud pit or drowned, which helped preserve her so well. People probably butchered her for meat, too, as there were cut marks on her bones. So these weren't the only dino remains William Hammer discovered in the mountains of Antarctica. In 1990, he and his team discovered a 22-foot meat-eating dinosaur called Cryolophosaurus. This was a big deal because it was the first dinosaur ever found in Antarctica. Cryolophosaurus was a meat-eating dinosaur that lived around 190 million years ago during the early Jurassic period. It was about 20 to 23 feet long, 6 to 7 meters, and weighed roughly 1,000 pounds. What really sets this dinosaur apart was its unique crest. The crest, found on the top of its head, had a very unusual shape, kind of like a frozen backwards mohawk. There are like two kind of things here. It's believed that the crest could have been used for display, either to attract mates or to communicate with other members of its species. As Hammer put it, it looked like a frozen crested reptile, which is how they got the name Cryolophosaurus, meaning frozen crested lizard. And again, in the early 1990s, William Hammer of Augustana College discovered more incredible fossils on Mount Kirkpatrick. These particular fossils included parts of a foot, leg, and ankle bones from a long-necked dinosaur that lived around 190 million years ago. It wasn't until much later, though, that the fossil was identified. The fossils were painstakingly removed from the ice and rock using jackhammers, rock saws, and chisels under extremely difficult conditions, said Nathan Smith, a graduate student at the Field Museum in Chicago. After a lot of hard work, Smith and paleontologist Diego Pohl realized they'd found a new species of dinosaur, which they named Glacialosaurus hammeri. This dinosaur was about 20 to 25 feet long and would have weighed between 4 to 6 tons. It belonged to a group called sauropodomorphs, which includes some of the largest dinosaurs ever. Think of those massive-sized, long-necked plant eaters. Around 20,000 years ago, a young woolly rhinoceros was going about its day in what's now northern Siberia. It was probably foraging for food when it made an oopsie and drowned in a river. Fast forward to 2020, and that same woolly rhino became a huge discovery for scientists. As rising temperatures cause permafrost to melt, creatures like this long extinct rhino are being uncovered, giving researchers a glimpse into prehistoric times. Permafrost is a layer of soil that's been frozen for thousands of years, great for preserving ancient remains. The woolly rhino's carcass was found by a local farmer in Yakutia, Siberia, about 15,000 years after the species went extinct. The fossil was incredibly well preserved, with its fur, hooves, and internal organs still intact. But what made this discovery even more special was the rhino's horn, which is rarely found in such good condition because cartilage usually decomposes relatively quickly. In 2018, a local man named Pavel Efimov made an incredible discovery in Siberia: the severed head of a giant wolf, perfectly preserved beneath the permafrost. But this wolf was nearly 40,000 years old. It wasn't until 2019 that researchers started studying it in detail. The big question they were trying to answer was whether the wolf's head had been chopped off by humans or separated by ice. The cut on the wolf's neck wasn't what you'd expect from ice separation. It was rougher, less smooth, meaning it might have been made by something like a tool. The severed head is quite large, measuring about 40 centimeters, much bigger than the typical 25 centimeter head of a modern Siberian wolf. It had a thick mammoth-like coat, sharp fangs, and some parts of its skull seemed more developed than today's wolves. In 2016, ornithologist Stephen Emsley made a surprising find during a research trip in Antarctica. He stumbled on ancient penguin remains at Cape Urzar near the Ross Sea, and what he discovered there was unlike anything he'd seen before. Now, at first, Emsley was researching ancient penguin remains at the site, following a lead about penguin droppings. He didn't expect to find much, since explorers like Robert Falcon Scott and Ernest Shackleton hadn't recorded any penguin sightings in the area. But when Emsley arrived, he found something unexpected: white splotchy guano stains and loose chick bones, which usually indicate that a penguin colony had recently occupied the site, but that wasn't the case. Investigating further, he found complete penguin chick carcasses and even intact mummies. The site must have been covered by snow and ice soon after the colony was last abandoned, preserving the surface remains for centuries, Emsley went on to write. The site had been used by penguins at different times in the past, with carbon dating showing it was occupied 3 times starting around 5,000 years ago. The site's location and the penguins' repeated visits were likely because of changing ice conditions, which would open and close the coast to the penguins. Emsley believes that this area could potentially see penguins returning in the future as climate change melts the sea ice earlier each summer, giving them access to the coast again. In 2018, some fossil ivory hunters in northeastern Siberia made a pretty cool discovery. While digging into the permafrost, they unearthed the carcass of a bird, but this bird was a 46,000-year-old specimen, perfectly frozen in time. The discovery was sent to paleontologist Love Dallin and a team of researchers at the Swedish Museum of Natural History. The bird is believed to be an ancestor of the horned lark, which is found in places like northern Russia and Mongolia today. It's a cool find though, the first bird of its kind ever to be discovered. The fact that the bird was almost completely intact made it one of the best preserved ancient animals ever found. The bird was found near Balayagora, a village in Yakutia, an area known as the Pole of Cold because of its extremely cold winters, sometimes reaching as low as -60 degrees Fahrenheit, which is roughly -50 degrees Celsius. That is just too cold. The researchers think that the end of the last ice age led to the formation of a new subspecies of animals like this bird. The discovery adds to a list of well-preserved creatures found in the same area, like a 42,000-year-old foal and an 18,000-year-old puppy, both of which I've talked about in previous videos. This video supposedly shows a woolly mammoth crossing a river in Siberia. It quickly went viral, racking up 3 million views on YouTube and more. People couldn't help but wonder if the mammoth had been living for centuries in remote parts of Siberia, completely untouched by humans. Now, whether you think this video is a hoax or not, there have been some interesting reports of supposed living mammoths. They're believed to have gone extinct over 10,000 years ago, but there are still stories floating around about them being spotted in some of the world's most remote places, especially in the northern hemisphere's tundra. Native American tribes have been telling tales about these creatures for years. The Northeast Algonquins talked about a great moose with a weird extra limb growing between its shoulders that it used to prepare its bed. The Naskapi people from northeastern Labrador spoke of a monster with a long nose that it would use to hit people. Even Siberian tribesmen have reported seeing large, shaggy beasts roaming around, though no one's actually caught solid proof. There have been mammoth sightings across Asia, South America, North America, and Russia. What you're looking at here is a massive-sized sturgeon. The footage originally posted by Ronald DeDrago was shared and reposted all over the internet, and it's easy to see why. The creature is just a monster. The sturgeon is an ancient creature that's been around since the early Jurassic period. Some of these fish can grow over 20 feet long, which is as big as a great white shark. They mostly feed on small animals from the ocean floor and are harmless to humans, but because of their size, they can still pose a threat. There have been reports of sturgeons leaping out of the water, landing on boats, and causing serious injuries or even death. They can weigh over 1,000 pounds. This footage here was posted to YouTube by Adam Pitts, who'd hauled in this Jurassic era-sized beast in Florida. A bunch of hunters had been trying to snag this thing because it was responsible for some deaths. No surprise there. This gator was not missing out on any meals. Pitts and his team had a long battle with the gator before finally hauling it out of the lake. It was about 12'8". It's sad, but unfortunately some animal populations just need to be controlled sometimes, especially when it comes to people's safety. This wasn't just a hunt for the thrill of it, it was for the protection of the community. In 2020, a perfectly preserved bear mummy was discovered in the Siberian permafrost. Siberia again. But anyway, it wasn't quite what scientists expected. At first, researchers thought they'd found the remains of a giant extinct cave bear, but eventually they realized the bear was much younger and from a completely different species. The bear was found by reindeer herders on a remote island in the East Siberian Sea. It was so well preserved that scientists could still see its skin, fur, claws, teeth, nose, internal organs, and even body fat. The remains were named the Arthropleura bear after a nearby river. At first, researchers at the Wolly Mammoth Museum believed the bear was a cave bear, a massive species that went extinct about 22,000 years ago, but this bear was only about 3,460 years old. Turned out to be a young female brown bear standing just over 5 feet tall and weighing around 172 pounds. It was probably around 2 to 3 years old when it died. The bear's stomach contents revealed it had been eating plants and birds, with feathers still found inside its belly, which is incredible when you think about it. It also had signs of spinal injuries, which may have contributed to its death. In 2016, a gold miner in Yukon, Canada discovered something frozen in the ice. It turned out to be an ancient wolf pup, which had been almost perfectly preserved for 57,000 years. The mummified gray wolf, known as Zur, was found in the Klondike goldfields near Dawson City. Lead researcher Wolly Mammoth, an anatomy professor, called it, quote, the most complete wolf specimen ever found from the Ice Age, going on to say all her soft tissue, her hair, her skin, even her little nose is still there. She's just complete, and that is really rare. Using radiocarbon dating and DNA analysis, scientists confirmed Zur died at just 7 weeks old. The remains were especially important because they were discovered in North America, unlike most finds in Siberia, as you've seen from this list, which are harder to access. Machen and her team were able to link Zur's DNA to both ancient Beringian wolves from Yukon and Russian gray wolves, which means that ancient wolves from North America and Eurasia mixed. Zur's remains also showed them what Ice Age wolves ate. The assumption had always been that they mostly ate bison or oxen, but as it turned out, this wolf mostly consumed aquatic animals, much like modern wolves in Alaska. In 2011, members of a tribe in northern Siberia found the remains of a steppe bison, perfectly preserved after being frozen for nearly 10,000 years. The bison was transported to the Yakutian Academy of Sciences, where scientists began to study it. Unlike other bison mummies discovered over the years, this one was almost entirely intact, with its internal organs in remarkable condition. Olga Potapova, collections curator at the Mammoth site of Hot Springs, explained that while bison mummies are not uncommon, they're usually incomplete, saying, quote, normally what you find with mummies of megafauna is partial carcasses, but this mummy was preserved so well that it earned a record for the level of its preservation. The bison, which was probably about 4 years old when it died, looked like it had starved to death. There was no fat around its abdomen, but its heart and digestive systems were pretty intact, even though some organs had shrunk over time. Researchers even managed to extract tissue samples from each organ, and for the first time ever, they found steppe bison brain tissue still preserved. In 2022, a nearly perfectly mummified baby woolly mammoth was discovered by a miner in the permafrost of Canada's Klondike goldfields, dating back around 30,000 years. The calf, thought to be around 1 month old when it died, was a female and measured just 4.5 feet long. Researchers described it as the most complete mummified mammoth found in North America. A lot of its skin and hair was still intact. As an Ice Age paleontologist, it had been one of my lifelong dreams to come face to face with a real woolly mammoth, said Grant Zazula, a paleontologist with the Yukon government, going on to describe the mammoth as, quote, one of the most incredible mummified Ice Age animals ever discovered in the world. The discovery happened when a mine worker hit something unexpected while digging. The team stopped all their work and brought in geologists who managed to recover the mammoth's remains, and just in time because a storm had been rolling in. Analysis suggested that the mammoth may have died after getting trapped in mud while grazing, with grass found in her stomach. In 2018, yet another incredible discovery was made in Siberia. The nearly perfectly preserved mummified remains of an Ice Age horse, believed to have died between 30,000 and 40,000 years ago. Its body was so well preserved that even tiny details like the hairs in its nostrils and around its hooves were still visible. The foal was found deep in a crater, about 328 feet or 100 meters deep, during an expedition in Yakutia. It was around 2 months old when it died. The mummified body was almost entirely intact, with no visible damage. Scientists collected samples from the foal's hair and tissue and found it belonged to an extinct species known as the Lena horse, which was genetically distinct from the wild horses that still roam the area today. This species lived in Siberia tens of thousands of years ago and disappeared long before modern horses evolved. In 2016, biologist Steve Emsley was in southern Antarctica when he came across something kind of confusing. It looked to be a recently abandoned Adelie penguin colony. There were mummified chicks, guano stains, pebbles from nests, but the thing is, Adelie penguins hadn't been spotted in the region for centuries. What Emsley soon discovered was that the penguin remains were far older than anyone could have imagined. Radiocarbon dating of the bones, eggshells, and mummified skin showed that these penguins had been dead for thousands of years. The rapidly melting ice in Antarctica revealed these ancient penguin remains. The penguins had likely settled in the area during warmer periods when the sea ice melted early, allowing the birds to reach the area and build their nests. The most recent colony, which had been buried during the Little Ice Age about 800 years ago, was finally uncovered as the region's ice began to recede. What you're looking at here is a tardigrade, aka a water bear. Now, is this a newly discovered alien species? Well, I wish, but no. These things actually exist right here at home. They're just really tiny, which I'm thankful for, because imagine if that alien-looking thing was the size of just even a regular house cat. That would just be horrifying. Tardigrades, nicknamed water bears, are one of the most resilient animals on the planet. They're microscopic animals that are known for their ability to survive in very extreme conditions all over the world. In places like Antarctica, they've been found frozen in ice for thousands of years. And what's amazing about these things is their ability to go into a kind of state of suspended animation. When conditions are harsh, like extreme cold or dryness, tardigrades dry out or freeze and enter a kind of hibernation. And when researchers thaw them out, they can come back to life. Water bears have even survived space travel in this dormant state. This makes them one of the toughest known organisms in the world.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Xiphactinus. Xiphactinus was a prehistoric fish that lived during the late Cretaceous period around 85 million years ago. It was a predatory fish that could grow up to 20 feet in length and weighed up to 1,500 pounds, making it one of the largest bony fish of all time. This fish had a long, streamlined body with powerful jaws and sharp teeth that allowed it to hunt and devour smaller fish and marine reptiles. It had a unique adaptation in its skeleton with a hinged lower jaw that could open very wide, allowing it to swallow prey whole. How terrifying is that? Fossils of this fish have been found in North America, particularly in what is now Kansas and Alabama, as well as in Europe and South America. It is believed that this fish went extinct along with the dinosaurs at the end of the Cretaceous period, around 66 million years ago. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Godzilla shark. With a name like that, this creature is surely anything but disappointing. About 300 million years ago, these guys ruled the sea and were one of the most terrifying sea creatures ever on our planet. Fossils of these guys have been found in the Mazzano Mountains, which lie east of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they were found in 2013 by paleontologist John Paul Hodnett. So think of a massive shark, but now picture it covered in scales, like a reptile. Okay, now add 12 rows of super sharp teeth, and also the largest dorsal fin spines of any shark that has ever lived. Okay, so now you've pretty much got a Godzilla shark. It was nicknamed the Godzilla shark because of its size, as the skeleton is the largest fossil of its kind ever discovered in the area, as well as the fact that its fin spines are so intriguing to look at. While it was called the Godzilla shark upon its discovery, it has since received a more official name of Hoffman's dragon shark, both to honor the family that owned the land where the skeleton was found, and as an homage to its monstrous and reptilian appearance. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Temnodontosaurus. Temnodontosaurus is a genus of extinct marine reptile belonging to the group of ichthyosaurs. They lived during the Jurassic period, approximately 180 to 150 million years ago. These guys were a large predator that could grow up to 33 feet or 10 meters long, with a very long and streamlined body that allowed it to swim quickly through the water. These guys had a long snout filled with sharp teeth that it likely used to catch and eat fish and squid. Fossil evidence suggests that they may have also been cannibalistic, with larger individuals preying on smaller ones. Like in ichthyosaurs, these guys gave birth to live young rather than laying eggs. I mean, it's the ocean. Several species of these guys have been described, with the most well-known being T. platiodon. This species was first described in the early 19th century and is known from fossil remains found in Europe, particularly in Germany and the UK. T. platiodon was named for its flattened teeth, which were adapted for crushing the shells of its prey. Overall, these guys were a formidable predator that dominated the Jurassic seas. Its large size and sharp teeth made it a fearsome sight for any smaller creatures that happened to cross its path. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Gorgonops, the saber-toothed predator before dinosaurs. Stalking the prehistoric plains long before dinosaurs reigned, Gorgonops was a predator you'd be thrilled doesn't exist today. This fearsome creature, about the size of a large wolf, was nothing like the canines we're familiar with. Sporting elongated saber-like teeth, it could take down prey with a single powerful bite. Its muscular body and sharp senses made it a top-tier hunter, allowing it to dominate the late Permian period without contest. Its primary targets were large herbivores, which it hunted relentlessly, ensuring it had no shortage of meals. The mere thought of such a formidable beast roaming around is enough to make anyone grateful that it's safely tucked away in the annals of history. If Gorgonops were still around, who knows where we'd stand on the food chain. In our number 6 spot today, we have Meganeura, the giant dragonfly. Soaring through prehistoric skies, Meganeura was a winged giant that would put today's insects to shame. With a wingspan stretching over 2.5 feet or 75 centimeters, this colossal dragonfly didn't just flutter about catching gnats. It was the apex aerial predator of the Carboniferous period. Dominating the atmosphere, it hunted other sizable insects and perhaps even small amphibians, turning the skies into a battlefield. Its immense size was made possible by the planet's higher oxygen levels back then, allowing creatures to grow to extraordinary proportions. Now imagine taking a casual stroll and needing to duck as a dragonfly the size of a hawk zips overhead, its enormous compound eyes locking onto movement with predatory precision. Outdoor barbecues? Forget about it, because you'd be on the menu this time. If Meganeura were still around today, we'd probably think twice before leaving the safety of our homes, let alone consider activities like paragliding or skydiving. The thought of sharing our airspace with such a behemoth is both thrilling and utterly terrifying, making us appreciate the relatively tame insects buzzing about in our current era. In our number 5 spot today, we have Thalatorchon saurophagus, the lizard-eating ruler of the seas. Thalatorchon saurophagus was the marine nightmare you'd be relieved to know is extinct. Measuring up to an impressive 28 feet or 8.6 meters in length, this early ichthyosaur wasn't content with just snacking on fish. It wielded massive, razor-sharp teeth designed to seize and dismember large prey, including other marine reptiles. Its name literally means lizard-eating ruler of the seas, and it more than lived up to that title. Think of a creature combining the size of a small yacht, the agility of a dolphin, and the ferocity of a killer whale, all wrapped into one formidable predator. If the Thalatorchon were still patrolling our seas today, leisurely swims and seaside vacations might be daring feats reserved for only the bravest among us. The mere thought of this colossal hunter lurking beneath the waves is enough to make anyone shudder. So as you enjoy your next beach day, perhaps spare a thought for the ancient seas where giants like the Latercon ruled, and be glad they're confined to the pages of history. In our number 4 spot today, we have Pulmonoscorpius kirktonensis, the giant terrestrial scorpion. Roaming the misty swamps of ancient Scotland, these guys were the stuff of primal fears brought to life. This giant terrestrial scorpion reached an astonishing length of up to 28 inches or 70 centimeters, dwarfing any of its modern-day relatives. With a sturdy exoskeleton and menacing pincers, it moved through the dense undergrowth, a silent predator in a world teeming with oversized insects and amphibians. The high oxygen levels of the Carboniferous period allowed creatures like this to grow to such unnerving sizes. While we can't say for sure how potent its venom was, just the idea of a scorpion the size of a small dog lurking in the shadows is enough to make anyone feel a little creeped out. Venturing into those prehistoric woodlands would have been a harrowing experience, constantly wary of the colossal arachnid that might be hiding under the next leaf. In our number 3 spot today, we have Asteminosuchus, the crowned crocodile of the Permian. Asteminosuchus roamed the middle Permian period as a crowned colossus, a creature that would make anyone grateful it's extinct today. About the size of a modern cow, this hefty therapsid was anything but ordinary. Its skull was a spectacle of nature, adorned with multiple horn-like projections jutting out in various directions, giving it a fearsome and almost mythical appearance. These bizarre bony outgrowths weren't just for show, they likely played roles in display, defense, or dominance battles. Encountering this crowned crocodile in the wild would have been a heart-stopping moment. Even though scientists believe it was herbivorous, or maybe omnivorous, its intimidating look and sheer bulk would make you question whether to stand your ground or run for the hills. If Asteminosuchus were still lumbering around today, our hikes and camping trips would take on a whole new level of adrenaline, and perhaps we'd really reconsider who's at the top of the food chain. In our number 2 spot today, we have Hatzegopteryx, the giant pterosaur of Transylvania. Soaring over the ancient landscapes of what is now Romania, Hatzegopteryx wasn't your average pterosaur. It was a flying behemoth that redefined what it meant to be terrifying. With an estimated wingspan of 36 feet or 11 meters, comparable to a small aircraft, this colossal creature dominated the late Cretaceous skies. Unlike its slender-necked relatives, Hatzegopteryx had a robust skull and a thick neck like Mike Tyson, suggesting it didn't just snack on fish or small animals. This airborne predator likely hunted larger prey, possibly even targeting small dinosaurs unfortunate enough to catch its eye. Its fossils were discovered in Transylvania, a region already steeped in legends of eerie beings. Back then, the area was an island teeming with unique and isolated species, making it a perfect hunting ground for a predator of such magnitude. Just imagine a predator that combines the wingspan of a fighter jet with the predatory instincts of a hawk. If Hatzegopteryx were still around today, our skies would be a lot more frightening, and airplane pilots might have some formidable traffic to contend with. It's enough to make you thankful that this Transylvanian terror is confined to fossil records, leaving us to only wonder what it would have been like to witness such a majestic yet terrifying creature in flight. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have Camaraoceras, the massive shelled cephalopod. Dwelling in the depths of the ancient Ordovician seas, Camaraoceras were a colossal shelled cephalopod that would make even the bravest sailor think twice about setting sail. With a towering shell that could reach up to 30 feet or 9 meters in length, this behemoth was essentially just a gigantic armored cone with tentacles. It was the undisputed ruler of the seas, seas, an ambush predator that turned the ocean floor into its personal hunting ground. These guys would lie in wait, its massive shell blending in with the seabed while its tentacles extended outward, ready to snare anything that ventured too close. These tentacles weren't just for show, they were powerful appendages capable of seizing and subduing prey with terrifying efficiency. Once caught, the unlucky victim would be drawn into a sharp, beak-like mouth that could crush shells and bones without mercy. The sheer size and predatory prowess of this ancient cephalopod would make even the largest of today's marine animals seem insignificant. It's creatures like these guys that make us grateful some monsters remain trapped in the pages of history. The next time you gaze out over the seemingly peaceful ocean, remember that it once hid giants that would make you reconsider that beach vacation. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Jaekelopterus, the giant sea scorpion. Swimming in the ocean might seem adventurous, but if Jaekelopterus still prowled the seas, we'd probably stick to dry land. This giant sea scorpion, measuring up to 8 feet long, yes, 8 feet, was one of the largest arthropods to ever exist. Living around 390 million years ago, it was the apex predator of its time, ruling the ancient waters with terrifying authority. Equipped with massive, crushing pincers that could make quick work of any prey, Jaekelopterus wasn't just big. It was built for domination. Its segmented body allowed for agile movement through the water, enabling sudden bursts of speed to ambush unsuspecting victims. Some scientists believe it had highly developed eyesight, giving it an even greater advantage in the murky depths. Now, think about this. Modern scorpions can be unsettling at just a few inches long. Imagine one that's the size of a car door, lurking beneath the waves, ready to snatch you with claws the size of baseball bats. Its mere presence would redefine our understanding of dangerous waters. Beach vacations? Forget about them. It's creatures like Jaekelopterus that make us grateful for the mass extinctions of the past. While we worry about sharks or jellyfish today, our ancient ancestors, had they existed, would have faced a far more formidable foe. So the next time you're wading in the ocean, take comfort in knowing that this prehistoric nightmare is safely locked away in fossil record. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Arthropleura, the enormous millipede relative. Walking through a prehistoric jungle when Arthropleura was around would have been the stuff of nightmares. This gigantic millipede relative stretched up to 8.5 feet, or 9.6 meters long, making it the largest known land invertebrate to ever exist. Roaming the forest floors during the Carboniferous period, it navigated the underbrush like a living, armored train, its countless legs creating a haunting symphony of clicks and rustles that just sends a chill down my spine. Oy. While scientists believe it was likely herbivorous, munching on ancient ferns and mosses, the idea of a millipede the size of a small car crawling nearby is enough to make anyone's skin crawl. Imagine the sight of this colossal creature rearing up, its segmented body towering over the foliage. Would you feel safe camping in the woods where such a behemoth might decide to wander through your campsite? It's a relief that today's millipedes are content to stay small, leaving us free to hike without the fear of crossing paths with an Arthropleura lurking in the shadows. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Helicoprion, the buzzsaw shark. If you are a fan of this channel, then you definitely know that swimming in prehistoric oceans came with a multitude of terrifying possibilities, but by far one of the most terrifying is the possibility of crossing paths with the Helicoprion, the legendary buzzsaw shark. Stretching up to 25 feet or 7.6 meters long, this ancient predator didn't just rely on size to intimidate. It sported one of the most bizarre and fearsome jaws in the history of marine life. Instead of a typical shark's grin, Helicoprion's lower jaw housed a spiral of razor-sharp teeth coiled tightly like a deadly saw blade. This whirl of teeth wasn't just for show. When it clamped down on prey, the spiral would spin inward, slicing through soft-bodied creatures with gruesome efficiency. Scientists are still debating exactly how this jaw mechanism functioned, but the consensus is clear. You wouldn't want to find out firsthand. Just think, a massive shadow glides beneath your boat, and suddenly you spot that nightmarish spiral breaching the surface. It's the stuff of legends and the reason why ancient mariners might have spun tales about sea monsters. If Helicoprion were still patrolling our oceans today, activities like swimming, surfing, or diving would take on a whole new level of risk. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Tylosaurus. These creatures belong to the family of mosasaurs, and they have long eel-like bodies that allowed them to smoothly cruise through the waters. They had the ability to have intense bursts of speed that propelled them to their prey, which they could quickly take down. The snout of these creatures is thought to have been quite large and robust compared to other species of mosasaurs, which has led researchers to believe that they may have used it to their advantage. To do this, they might have rammed into larger prey so that they were stunned. This gave them time to turn around and finish the prey with their large jaws. Despite these specialized skills, it seems as though these guys weren't very picky with what they ate, as they have been found with all kinds of remains found in their stomach area. These creatures were very large, but they are also way faster and more agile compared to other mosasaurs. What more could you want in a prehistoric predator? In our number 6 spot today, we have Heliococysts moroccensis. These guys are an extinct animal that lived around 520 million years ago during the Cambrian period. They were a small, bizarre-looking creature with a spiral-shaped body and a mouth surrounded by tentacles. These guys are known from fossil remains found in Morocco. Scientists believe that these guys were a filter feeder, using their tentacles to capture plankton from the water. The spiral shape of its body may have helped to control its buoyancy and to help them just stay afloat in the water. Its mouth was located at the center of the spiral, and its tentacles extended outward to capture food. These guys are a very important animal in the study of early life on Earth because it belongs to a group of animals known as echinoderms. Echinoderms are a diverse group of animals that include modern-day sea stars, sea urchins, and sea cucumbers, all of the weird things sitting on the ocean floor. The discovery of these guys has helped scientists to better understand the evolution and the diversity of echinoderms. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Megalodon. Okay, my favorite, your favorite, everyone's favorite. Is any terrifying prehistoric sea creatures list truly complete without an appearance from the Meg? Megalodons are one of the largest sharks to have ever existed. They were huge, they were terrifying, they were apex predators, and they are the creatures that inspired the tales of Jaws, or the Meg. The teeth on these sharks are so large that they are 3 times larger than the teeth of a modern great white shark. With teeth that size, you can only imagine how large this shark would have been. It's pretty tough to figure out exactly why the Megalodon died out. I mean, they were one of the largest, scariest creatures who shouldn't have had any trouble getting food, but that might not be the case. Some believe it was the cooling waters, others believe it was the competition for food. Whatever the case in the end, while the Megalodon is an incredible creature in history, I think we can all breathe a sigh of relief that they aren't currently swimming around our oceans. Or are they? In our number 4 spot today, we have the Opabinia regalis. Opabinia regalis is an extinct animal that lived around 505 million years ago during the Cambrian period. It was a small, bizarre-looking creature with a long, segmented body that measured up to about 7 centimeters in length. Pretty tiny compared to the other giants on this list. Opabinia had 5 eyes and a nozzle-like proboscis at the front of its body, which is likely used to grab prey from the seafloor. Opabinia is an important animal in the study of early life on Earth because it belongs to a group of animals known as arthropods. Arthropods are a diverse group of animals that includes things like insects, spiders, and crustaceans. Opabinia is unique among arthropods because of its unusual body plan and its feeding habits. They likely fed on small invertebrates and other small animals on the sea floor. Its proboscis may have been used to probe the sediment for prey, and its 5 eyes likely helped it to locate prey in low light conditions. These guys are known from fossil remains found in the Burgess Shale Formation in British Columbia, right here in Canada. The Burgess Shale is a world-famous fossil site that has yielded many important discoveries in the study of early life on Earth. Opabinia is just one of the many fascinating and bizarre creatures that lived during the Cambrian period. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Helicoprion. This animal existed somewhere around 250 million years ago, and while it looks more like a shark than anything else, scientists now know that that it was actually a creature that is related more closely to chimeras, which are a fish that separated from the shark family about 400 million years ago. So why is this animal just so scary and terrible to look at? Well, that is due to the incredibly unsettling spiral saw formation of teeth that this creature had right on their lower jaw. Yeah, an orthodontist's dream, truly. It's also not like this creature was just born with this teeth that they had for the rest of their lives. No, of course not. They had teeth that could grow, and new teeth could even form. Imagine being in the ocean and you see a huge creature swim up to you that has 4 spiral saws for teeth. Yeah. No thanks. Never going swimming. In our number 2 spot today, we have Cephalaspis. Cephalaspis is an extinct fish that lived around 400 to 360 million years ago during the Devonian period. It has a flattened, armored head and a small, streamlined body that measured up to about 60 centimeters in length. These guys likely lived in freshwater environments and fed on small invertebrates and plankton. These guys had a bony plate on the top of their head that protected their brain and their sensory organs. This plate, known as a cephalic shield, was shaped like a triangle and had 2 large openings for the eyes. These guys also had a pair of small paddle-shaped fins near the front of their body that they used for swimming. These guys are an important animal in the study of early fish evolution because it is one of the earliest known jawless fish. Jawless fish include modern-day lampreys and hagfish. They lack the jaws and paired fins that are found in most modern fish. These guys are known from their fossil remains that have been found in many parts of the world, including Europe, North America, and Asia. The discovery of these guys have helped scientists to better understand the early evolution of fish and the diversification of life during the Devonian period. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have Anomalocaris. These guys are an extinct animal that lived around 500 million years ago during the Cambrian period, and they were a large predatory animal that measured up to a meter in length. These guys had a circular mouth surrounded by spiny plates, which it likely used to grasp and crush its prey. These guys are an important animal in the study of early life because they are one of the earliest known arthropods. These guys are unique among arthropods, however, because they have a very unusual body plan and also unusual feeding habits. They had a segmented body and a pair of large paddle-shaped appendages at the front that helped it swim through the oceans. Its circular mouth was lined with sharp teeth, and its spiny plates may have been used to grasp and manipulate their prey. These guys are known from fossil remains found in many parts of the world, including Canada, China, and Australia. They're kind of all over the place. The discovery of these guys has helped scientists to better understand the early evolution of arthropods and just, what was going on during the Cambrian period.